Hello, thanks for tuning in and welcome to the pool party. I hope you can swim because we're definitely diving into the deep end with a huge splash of truth, facts, evidence, information, and proof. Swim. Say what you mean. It's talk about talking. How we listen, how we hear, how we speak, how we hear what we're listening to when we speak, how a listener hears what we're saying, if what we're saying, what they're actually hearing and or understanding. Is it clear? Swim. Say what you mean. Well, that's just the beginning of understanding, because after we get that understanding, how do we accept it? How we respond if it's not what we expect is paramount. Are you okay with the truth? Are you man, woman, human, or spiritual enough to accept the truth? Let's find out. Welcome to The Swimming Pool with your host, Travis Bridges.
Bam! That would be me. Good evening, everybody. Here's hoping that you are having a fantastic Wednesday evening. I am. Man, I'm gonna tell you, I used to watch this show called Hee Haw. And one of the lines I remember from Hee Haw was when Grandpa and the gang would get together with their banjos. And when you're from where I'm from, back in the Kakalaki, we didn't have much. We used to watch stuff like, the Duke Boys and Hee Haw and stuff like that. If you're from my hometown, you'll know what I'm talking about. Or if you're from the country, down south, you definitely know what I'm talking about. But I remember there was this this part that said, if it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. It was part of the song. But anyway, here's hoping you're having a fantastic Wednesday evening. I am. I have some serious stuff to talk about. We're talking about straight talk and straight accountability. This live stream is about talk. It's talk about talking. And I am convinced that communication is so important. Talking is important. But communication is, I believe, the key to even world peace. When I say communicating, I don't mean just talking just to be talking. You have to have some keys in place. Talking and being truthful and real. There's some things that are in place already. They're called universal principles. They're called points of references. And of course, there is law. Nowhere in any of that has ego, personal preferences, beliefs, thoughts, or, anything like that. You have to be able to remove that, and it requires strength. It requires maturity. And it requires wisdom to be able to listen, hear, ask questions, respond to questions, and really get to the bottom. If I could quote one of my favorite books, it says, the greatest enemy of all time was actually kicked out because of his ego, wanting to override what was already set in place. The story about the devil. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I think it's a very good example. I happen to believe it, so I'm using it as an example. Even in that case, there were things already set, and, someone wanted to rise up above truth. Truth. Come on, man. How do you rise up against, truth? Anyway, I'm going to get into the meat, and I do have a guest that's standing by that I'm going to call. Let me get my guest on the phone right now, and then we'll get into, the meat. I like to call it the meat, typical of a person who likes to eat, to use analogies that involve food.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about yourself?
Not bad. I was about to say I'm going to need you to turn that sexy voice off, but you turned it up really quick. You must be accustomed to how I do things. So thanks for jumping into character. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. Well, before we get into the meat, I want to share with you something that happened to me last week. That was totally incredible. I'm not going to take a long time. I told you how long I was going to keep you, and I'm going to let you go. But I've been on extended stays back and forth. Taking advantage of some incredible opportunities. And while I was actually out of the country last week, I ran into some folk that was. It was interesting, and I want to tell you the story, okay?
Sure.
Okay, so while I was out, anytime I'm anywhere, whether I'm in the country, out of the country, in or out of the state, or even just, out of a city, if I have my horn with me, I look for opportunities to play, because an opportunity to play is an opportunity to get increase. So I was at this one place totally out of the country, not even where I was actually supposed to be. I had ventured over into another little small town in the major place that I was staying for a while. And I was what I consider in the middle of nowhere. So I find this opportunity to play, and I set up, and I'm playing for like a whole 40-minute set. The people are checking it out, they're grooving, it's going, the sound system wasn't the best, but I totally got beyond that. And I was playing, my horn and doing my thing, and everything was cool. So after about 45 minutes or so, I finished the set. I packed up, and, people were coming over saying, how much they enjoyed it. They were really cool about it. And this family came over, and they started talking to me. So as they were talking to me, they were saying that they could first of all, they could hear that the music was American. I was in a Spanish-speaking country, and of course, you hear Latin tunes all around. Of course, American music is famous and popular everywhere, but the native music is, Latin tunes. But when you hear some American music in a non-American or English-speaking culture, you recognize it right away. So these people came through, and they came up to talk to me, and I thought it was really cool. People were being nice, and I don't get to hear English that much whenever I'm traveling abroad. So as they were talking, I was listening. And it's like, whoa, it's so cool, to hear, some English. So as we started talking, they were saying that, okay, they had some experience and had been in Florida. And then they started talking about areas around me, Pembroke Pines, Davie, Tampa, and there's a couple other places they meant, Jacksonville. And I was like, oh man, this really feels like home. But what are these people, being from where I'm from, in this little small hick town way out, in the bush? So we started talking, and it was a man and his wife and their son. So as I'm listening to them talking, we're having small talk about, the USA, South Florida in particular, and these areas. And I'm looking at this guy, and I'm thinking, I know him. And I'm thinking, how can you know somebody and they be right here? But it's impossible. So I just, shook it off. And as I kept going, I kept looking at him. It's like, man, he might even look like one of my cousins, or somebody that I know. Anyway, you're still with me. I'm running a lot of talk right now. You're still with me, right?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
we continued to talk, and we began to get, more familiar. And I was telling them that I was going to be in the area for a little while. So they were asking me, well, have you checked out this place, that place, or the other? And I was like, no, I'm just kind of in and out. And but I really would like to check it out. And they were saying, well, you should check out this place. And we ended up talking for at least maybe 20 or 30 minutes, just shooting the breeze, just, talking. And as they were inviting me and encouraging me to go to certain places, while I was in town, for some American stuff or things that would interest me, I was like, okay, cool. And I don't like asking for people's number, and I don't just give my number out freely, but something just said, go ahead and don't worry about it. So I was like, hey, man, I just gave the guy my phone and said, hey, just put your number in, and, when I'm around, I'll give you a buzz, and maybe you can definitely show me, some of these places. And they were like, okay, yeah, cool, let's do that. So he was clearly technically challenged, and his son, took his phone and put his number in. And when I looked at that name and that number, all kind of lights started going off. And I have some photos from the following few days that we connected. And I said, I'm going to hook up with them, and I'm going to go off camera for a few minutes to finish telling the story. But we hung out, a few days later, and it was so cool to catch up. Come to find out, this is the guy who worked the brokerage deal on, some of my first in real estate investments 20 plus years ago. He did 2 deals for me and my former spouse, and I remember his name because one of those deals was like, it was very difficult to get done. And I remember the realtor saying, if anyone can do it, this guy can do it. And I remember going to his office, about 4 years apart on a couple of different occasions and sitting there with him. And the reason I knew it was him before I heard his name, and I said, let me just do one little test. And I said, you graduated from Florida State, didn't you? And he was like, yeah. So long story short, I was standing there for a half hour talking to a guy that I had known and had done business with 20 plus years before. And they didn't exactly remember me. When I told his wife my name, she was like, okay, the name does ring a bell. But the more we started talking, the more, it started to make sense that, okay, it is very likely that we do know this guy and that we did business with him. And we just knew too much about each other in the business and, the places they had been and the interactions and, for it just to not be true. Long story short, they kind of took to me and we hung out, last week. And these are some of the pictures from that. And I couldn't show all the pictures, but just to show them they were very, very kind to me. I'm accustomed to driving everywhere I go, but I got to ride with someone else and they took me to lunch and to dinner. And it's like I'm forever trying to pay a check or a tab, but they insisted that my money was no good and they just treated me like somebody. And I had some tears in my eyes, but I didn't let them see it. But it felt good to be loved on and treated like somebody by people who seemed to be strangers, but they were good, old-fashioned, down-home, good people that were just showing love to me. And of course, now I have their number and we're working out some other things. And I have a feeling that we probably won't see each other every day or too often, but it's good to have a connection when you're in and out of town, especially when you're in and out, of a country as much as I plan to frequent, different places. But when I'm, around and I know that these people are there, it just feels good. So I just wanted to tell that story. What do you think of that? Incredible, right? I know it was a long story, but it was incredible.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it just shows you how small this world can really be,
Yes.
You just never know who you're going to cross paths with. And this is a perfect example of that.
And I tell you, I'll bet you, while I was there playing for that 40-minute, there were 10,000 people that came by, drove by, walked by, flew by, and the right time, the right place. It was these people that, I had known. It was just so cool. So I believe there's more things we're probably going to do in the future. Sometimes, I get religious. Sometimes I think, nothing is a mistake. Nothing is coincidence. And we're working on some other things, and we're probably going to partner up and do some other things. If nothing else, I've got to at least buy them lunch or dinner and we hang out again. But it was a cool experience. I thought it was cool. And I thought I'd share it with you before we get into the meat. And we're still on time, and I think we're going to make it.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that wonderful story.
Absolutely.
Glad you had such an awesome experience.
Yeah. And maybe you'll get to meet him one day since you and I are cool. By the way, I just found out I'm going to be back in town in about 10 more days. And when I do, I am buying you lunch. So get ready. We're going to be hanging out hopefully within the next 10 days. So get ready.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to hold you to that, sir.
All right. No doubt. Okay. With all that good stuff being said, I came across something, today, maybe it was yesterday, that just sparked my attention. Certain things trigger certain people in different ways. And I have such a problem with people being straight, saying what they mean and meaning what they say. And I don't know, if it's a blessing or a curse. And when I get to heaven, I'm going to talk to God. I'm going to say, hey, man, why did you make me this way? Why is it that, the little boy in me expects people to come through with what they say? And I just don't expect people to be nasty or mean or difficult or impossible. And although I get accused of that sometimes, I have to correct, that statement and say, okay, I admit I am complex, but I'm not difficult. I'm not going to let you say that about me. But anyway, back to my point. I was listening to something, and I'm going to play it for my audience. I already shared it with you, but we're going to listen to it again. It's only about a minute and some change. But then we're going to talk about this reaction, and I'm going to talk about a text message because I shared it with someone else who's very dear to me, and I wanted to get their feedback on it. So if you will be so kind with me, I'd like to also share before I play it. Well, I don't know, maybe I won't. The other person that I shared it with, just in conversation, said that, well, let me just get into it. I'm going to play it, and then we'll talk about it, okay? Okay, y'all, with me? Okay, here we go. So, yeah, here it is right here. It's about a minute and a half, so I'll be right back. You guys listen, hang in there.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
what I can say is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition happened,
I'm going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is that a yes? So I'm trying to get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech. Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're not answering that. Let me ask you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is
My
different
question,
than gender.
Why
and I do believe that women's sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right now.
Ms. Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I would like to enter into the record
participation.
an article from Duke Law.
Okay. Okay, so you did watch the clip and you heard it. I have a question to ask you, and then we can get into it. Was this woman difficult or stubborn? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is there anything that she said that did not contribute to the official definition of stubborn? Yes or no?
Say that question again?
Is there anything that she did or said that did not contribute to the official definition of stubborn? I know it's a trick question, not a trick question, but everything she said and did was consistent with what we know stubborn to be, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not picking on this woman. I don't know her. I think I know who that senator was, or whoever that political figure was. I at least know his name. And I don't get into politics at all. It was just, this thing just, was forwarded to me, and I just listened to it. And I just thought it was amazing how you can actually ask someone something specific and direct. And if they have their own agenda, or if they have strong beliefs, they are going to skate away from, truth, facts, information, and evidence just to support their agenda. And I can't, blame someone for doing that. But there comes a time where you have to acknowledge logic and reasoning. You can't just be stubborn just because you feel something, because you believe something, just because you think something, or you just want your way. There's universal principles for a reason. There's standards in society for a reason, and there's law, for a reason. We have to abide under that if we're going to be cooperative and exist in society. But what I witnessed in just that, again, I don't know that lady. I'm not picking on her. It was just an example of what I see too often when even I'm interacting with people, or when I see other people arguing, fussing, and fighting. You can really get to the bottom of something if you're just truthful And if you can be sincere and, you know, take out personal feelings, thoughts, beliefs, and opinions, it's okay to have that. We need that. But when it comes to resolving conflict, we have to find a way to put that aside. So I want your thoughts on what you heard, and how did that make you feel to see someone being, and I'm just going to say it, I thought she was very difficult, and I thought she was very stubborn. And maybe it wasn't her. I'll take it back. The way she was responding was difficult and stubborn to me.
Well, I agree with you. I truly felt that she just needed to answer the question and not give all these explanations, because that's not what he was asking. And I know in her mind, because I felt this way too. It's, you know, we've all probably been in these situations where we want to elaborate. Oh my God, okay. We want to elaborate, say more, justify our answer, whatever. But the question he was asking her was very simple. He was asking her something that I feel is not black and white. Male or female is pretty black and white. Yes or no. So I think she was just being difficult. I agree with you on that.
I say often that I don't want anyone to prove me wrong, but I would really like to have a conversation with someone that agrees differently, or, you know, not agrees differently, but sees that in a different way. And I did speak with someone, as I said, someone very dear to me, and I asked them if they thought, you know, that the woman was displaying a stubborn behavior, and they said no. And we went back and forth. They started explaining about how, you know, there's a new ruling that says, you know, transgenders can now be identified, you know, by, you know, whatever it is they claim to be. And that's fine. I'm not contesting that at all. I know what the law says, and I respect the law 100%. But when it comes down to, you know, resolving conflict and asking and answering questions specifically and direct, just because you have enough information to raise doubt, you can't let that be, you know, the primary focus of, you know, whatever, you know, the point is. And not just like, it's like, you know, how they say you have the rule and then you have the exception to the rule. Sometimes the exception to the rule gets, you know, overpowered by, you know, by the rule. And I appreciate you taking a moment, and I'm glad I'm not taking a long time, and I'm glad we were able to get through this, you know, pretty quickly, because something must be happening to me. You know, I get up so early in the morning to start my day with my workout, and just, you know, I don't know, maybe, you know, I'm going to associate it with old age, just to be, not old age, wisdom. I like to go to bed early, and this is getting to be late for me, because just before my live stream, I was struggling to stay awake, and I'm sleepy now. I'm ready to go to sleep because I will be up early. But anyway, give me some more, you know, closing thoughts, at least, on, you know, your thoughts about being stubborn and not answering specific and direct questions when we're attempting to resolve conflict.
Well, you know, maybe I'm not so, I don't know if I'm the right person to have the conversation, because on this particular topic, I for sure agree with you. And it's funny of the subject matter of, because this is a conversation I've had with my husband, with a couple of friends here recently, because it has been coming up quite frequently. And I think, like I said before, it's very clear to me. And I am like one of the most liberal persons that you're ever going to find. And I think everybody should be treated equally. But I do know, in my personal opinion, a man and a woman are not the same. Period. So, and especially on the whole thing with the whole sports scene, he was trying to convince her, or use that analogy, which is such a simple analogy, because if you watch sports, there is a clear, undeniable clear difference between a woman and a man in any sport. It doesn't matter if it's track, soccer, football, just about any sport that has some physical activity to it, there's a difference. So, I know that this is a very hot topic going on right now, and I wish that it wasn't getting as much attention as it is getting, because at the end of the day, I think that most people can agree that a man and a woman are different. And hopefully most people can agree and have that base foundation for wherever they feel, but just have that base logic. I mean, that's just biological, period. It ends right there. And I'm normally not that kind of person that ends right there, but in this particular thing, it really is very simple.
I'm not sure of what she was trying to argue, and I'm going to have to go back and listen again, because the person I was talking to today was, trying to say something that was consistent with maybe what it was she was trying to say. And I was so blown away by her lack of cooperating with, a basic, simple question. It's as if she said, okay, I don't care about the truth. I don't care about facts. I don't care about proof or evidence. I just want to talk about, what it is that I want it to be. She want there to be some kind of equality as it comes to, gender. And as human beings, yes, we're created equally, and that's fine. I'm not arguing that. But there is a difference between men and women as it relates to, strength in particular. And I think that's what he was, making a point about, especially when he was talking about sports. I don't know what that lady was arguing. I don't know why she was evading the question. I don't know what point she was trying to make overall. Nobody is, I guess it seems like people who are, a part of that community, that involves, transsexuals, and whatnot. I'm not talking against that in any kind of way. I think people are people, and I'm okay with that. If people want to be identified in a certain way, so be it. I don't know enough about that to be for or against that argument. But there are some basic things that in order for us to even have a conversation, we've got to be able to reason before we can even, even have a conversation. We both, if we're going to communicate, we probably need to speak the same language. I'm in different countries where there's different languages now, but it's like, it's still communication. You've got to know some of the words. And for you and me to even have this conversation, one thing has to happen. We have to understand and be able to speak English. And I think, that same thing applies, when you're trying to resolve conflict or get to the bottom of anything. You've got to be on the same page. And they couldn't get on the same page because, again, I think she was being unreasonable. Was he being unreasonable at all? I don't want to be the only one. I don't know if he was, because I don't know enough about what she was trying to say that, okay, maybe he was being unfair to her, because maybe he was. Maybe someone had some information about what she was trying to say that I'm just ignorant to, and I just don't know it. But can you think of anything that you heard or saw that suggests that he was being unreasonable towards her?
No, not that I can think of. I think that, they both were trying to prove a point. I don't know the extent of what she was trying to prove, but it wasn't, the conversation wasn't long enough, or the clipping wasn't long enough for us to get a grasp of. Obviously, there were some other questions that were asked that led to that particular point where they got to. And if she was not giving him the answer that he wanted, or just answering the question because for whatever reason it didn't go with what she was originally or talking about beforehand or what have you. We only have this very short period of time, so it's kind of hard to explain.
Right.
It's kind of hard to get the whole thing. However, just from that, if we base it on the questions that he was asking her, just based on those questions, it should have been very simple. But obviously she felt that it was more than that because of the context of the whole conversation, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he was being stubborn, or I just know based on that minute and whatever it was, she definitely appeared that she did not want to answer his questions because of what that would mean based on what she'd already said or what have you, right?
Right.
And that happens every day. But I can understand how people get frustrated because I don't like when you ask me yes or no because you're trying to force me to say something, right?
Okay.
So I understand how she felt. But at the same time, it's not asking. When I'm trying to elaborate on something, it's usually something that I feel one strongly about, or two just does have some other factors that can change that question. But when you ask to me it was a simple question, but to her obviously it wasn't, and that could be the same for somebody else too, right? So it is some interpretation, but at the end of the day, if we can't agree on the basic reasoning or scientific stuff here, I have no problem with transgender women. I absolutely love them. Not an issue at all. However, they have trans before their name for a reason, right? So that's a whole other conversation. However, they were born a male. Period. There you go. And it's interesting.
Let me just say, they were born what we identify with as a male. I'm not going to say what they were born as because I don't know, and they may have a point. But as I said, we have universal principles, and we have normal social norms, and from the far back as I can know, it's already been established what a man is and what a woman is, what a female is and what a male is. And okay, maybe they were born something, but we haven't identified it yet. Maybe we're coming up with something new, and I'm open to listen to that. But until we get some other information or evidence, let's just stick with what we definitely know and what's already have been established instead of trying to create something new. Then again, maybe that does open up the door to more conversation. And, I'm open to hear, and I'm going to listen again. I'm going to listen more to the whole thing. But anyway, I cut you off. I hope you can find your place again.
No, but at the end of the day, like you said, the question was, as we know it today, are male and female the same? That's it. We want to add another adjective or call somebody something different, another word. I'm okay with that too because, listen, we evolve. We're humans. Things change. Everybody want to be called something to identify with or whatever. But at this point in time, is a male and female the same? Yes or no? And that's the answer. That's the question that he asked. Now, why he was asking that could be different, right?
Right.
But the question of is male and female the same? Period. That's it. But maybe she just knew where he was trying to go to and tried to avoid that.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that what you just said right there is where when someone is against the wall, it's almost like I will almost do anything to save my life. Lying, stealing, and cheating, to save your life. I mean, you can't blame a person. It's a natural instinct. But in a conversation, I don't think your life is at stake. Maybe your ego is at stake. And I think that's what happens, when people get caught up in not wanting to, to be wrong. And let me just put this thing up about the need to be right, if I can find it. I'm just going to say this in the middle. The need to be right can be a symptom of anxiety or abandonment. Many of us unconsciously worry that people close to them will leave. People who suffer from anxiety or abandonment are often overly sensitive to criticism, tend to make measures to avoid rejection, and work hard to please other people. I have some more stuff, on that, but I'm not going to get into it for the sake of time. I promise you I was going to let you go. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I do want to say this, since you brought it up. You talked about me, and I just can't let you just talk about it without having some kind of form of defense. You said you don't like it when I ask you yes or no. I'm no different than he was asking her yes or no. Why can you not like it when I ask you yes or no, but you can see where she was being a little difficult and stubborn? Now explain that, and then I'll let you go.
When you ask yes or no questions to things that I don't feel is a yes or no answer, that's when it's frustrating. And that's maybe what happened for her. She felt that that wasn't a yes or no answer. Again, I'm saying it's a yes or no answer for me. But for her, obviously it wasn't a yes or no answer. I get frustrated when you ask me yes or no questions when I don't feel, and I'm going to say my feelings, so it'll make me wrong, but when I feel like it's not a yes or no question you're asking me, but you're forcing me to say yes or no.
No, don't say I forced you. Just say I persuade you, or I encourage you to realize what I guess, if I had the opportunity, it looks like she was just flat out hell bent. She was not going to answer him no matter what. And the person I was interacting with today, I think it's just a personal thing against my personality. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Yes, I'm, a little offended and maybe even a little overly sensitive. People are just going to see you a certain way, and they're going to find opportunities to disagree, whether you are right or not. I think when I ask yes or no, you may want to explain, you may want to tell different stories. And I said to the person today, if you were assaulted and we were trying to charge the person who actually assaulted you, and I was using her as an example, and I was saying someone was running around the bases, trying to hide from the fact that, okay, if someone stole from you and you saw them do it, you have them on video, maybe the video is inadmissible, but you have the evidence, but they're saying something other than, well, where were you? Well, I wasn't there. Well, were you in, where were I was, anything. You wouldn't want someone to run that way just because they're trying to, especially if they're, trying to avoid something. And bottom line, I'm not speaking for the lady. I'm just going to give my input. No one asked my opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think she was trying to insist on having her way, and she wanted to be right. And although, he was asking her specific and direct questions, she just wasn't going to answer. But I promise you that anytime, particularly on my platform here in this live stream, if I ask a yes or no question, it's because I am trying to get clarity as to where we're going. If you want to explain, by all means, explain. But answering yes or no is a big deal when it comes to knowing where you stand and where you don't stand. So I think yes or no questions are often necessary. They're very uncomfortable, but they're uncomfortable mostly for people who have something to hide or someone who may stand to not get their way. That's the only time it's hard. So you can close and then I'll let you go.
I'm done.
Okay.
Thank
I appreciate it. No. I insist. Thank you. I owe you a serious lunch. I think we're going to go somewhere, kind of uppity, this time, because I do get you at the last one.
Okay, Travis.
We're going to go somewhere uppity. In a few weeks. So anyway, have yourself a wonderful evening. Do me a small favor. Find someone you need to say I love you to. Don't just say it, but show it and mean it. Will you do that for me?
For sure.
Okay. Have a good night. I love you.
I love you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
There you have it, my friends. Another caller. And I'm just going to find a way, to close. I'm going to play this one more time. And then I'll be back to make my closing statements. Listen carefully. Tell me what you hear and what you see, maybe even what you feel. But here it goes again just before I go.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
I mean, what I can say is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition
Okay, I'm going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is that a yes? So I'm trying to get a
yes.
yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech.
Is
there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're
which
not
is
answering
different
that.
than
Let me
gender.
ask you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is
My
different
question,
than gender.
why
and I do believe
why
that
do
women's sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I would
determine
like to enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke.
Okay, there you have it. Now, she did say something that I can relate to as it relates to, my efforts lately to learn another language, Spanish in particular. I'm trying to learn a little Creole too, and some French, kind of sort of the same. But I have, instructors that'll say, that verb or the gender of the verb, it's masculine or feminine. And then, the instructor one time was saying, well, it's male or female. And I was like, okay, I think we're on to something. The verb or the noun, or the subject is not male or female, but it is masculine or feminine. So I'm not sure if she was trying to, make something of that. But that's where I'm going to leave it. Unfortunately, I have to say something that maybe is not nice about, that lady's behavior. And I will apologize if I am proven, to be inconsistent with what I was clearly able to see. Her refusing to answer specific and direct questions kind of bother me, because that's how I get clarity. And when I don't get that cooperation, it does kind of aggravate me a little bit. And I know, as my very dear friend just said, she doesn't like it when I ask her that. And I guess I get on her nerves, and that's fine. She still loves me. I still love her. But I think, to answer yes or no is important. Even if you want to explain later, she could have simply said, yes, there's a difference. Of course, it probably would have canceled a lot of what she had to say. But how do you ever get to the bottom of anything? I don't know. Anyway, that's my spiel. I am here because of my desire to be clear, as it relates to communication and resolving conflict. This is SWIM, SWYM. It is the acronym for Say What You Mean. I believe not only should you say what you mean, someone should really understand not only what you mean, but what you're saying, and they should be consistent. You don't know how many times, I hear someone saying something and then I say, well, wait a minute, that's not what you said. Well, what I meant. And I'll listen, and it's usually very inconsistent what someone is saying. It's usually not always what is coming out of their mouth or what they're feeling. It's a tough thing to do. And I think my efforts to be consistent with it has given me, I don't want to call it an edge. I'm very careful with what I say, not because I want to be tricky or anything. I just believe that, language and the meaning of words have meanings for a reason. And you should say what you mean. And if you mean something different than what you say and someone called you on it, you should be able to admit it, that, okay, you're right, I didn't say that. It was more of my feeling. And I believe we can resolve a whole lot more stuff if we can do that. Okay? With that being said, I'm going to get on out of here. I'm going to let you go. Have yourself a wonderful rest of the week. I really appreciate it. If you have a subject you'd like for me to talk about, I will address it. Or if you'd like to talk to me yourself, you can send me an email to travisbridges2@aol.com. That's Travis Bridges and the number 2 to AOL.com. I'm not here because I'm a professional. I'm not a therapist, a counselor, anything like that. I just, enjoy good, intelligent, stimulating conversation, and I do it for therapy for myself. Sometimes I can get someone to chime in with me, not all the time, but either way, I promise to be here on Wednesday nights for myself. If by chance you are joining me, I really appreciate it, whether it's live right now or whether it's later in the week. But thank you again for your support and my continued effort to provide therapy for myself. Till the next time, take good care of yourself. Find someone you need to say I love you to. Don't just say it, but show it. Have yourself a fantastic evening. Good night.
Mighty Horn Music. Mighty Music.
As time draws near and you plan your social events, call Mighty Horn Music for a party you and your friends will never forget. From banquets, receptions, family reunions, and church functions to birthday, executive, or private parties, Mighty Horn delivers. Event packages include live musicians, psalmists, comedians, clowns, and a karaoke show that's guaranteed to make you laugh. Mighty Horn Music specializes in providing a variety of music to keep your guests going for hours. Mighty Horn Music. Let us create a custom sound for your special event. From start to finish, Mighty Horn Music will plan your theme, decorate, cater, and entertain your guests with class and style. This year, make your events live with Mighty Horn Music. Call 786-487-7338, 786-487-7338, or log on to mightyhornmusic.com and let's party.
Atlanta. It's jazz time. The Family Health Centers of Georgia and Toyota present Sounds of Good Medicine. Don't miss jazz greats Peter White and Vincent Ngala. The smooth voice of Phil Perry.
Baby, will you call me the moment?
Along with saxophonist Paul Taylor. And renowned jazz vocalist Nicole Henry.
And I'm feeling good.
Sounds of Good Medicine benefit concert. Hosted by Atlanta's #1 man on stage, MC Lightfoot. Be there Saturday, September 9th, 7 p.m. at the Mabel House Amphitheater in Mapleton, Georgia. Bring your own food and drinks, and parking is absolutely free. An awesome evening of great jazz starting at just $59. Saturday, September 9th. Tickets available at Ticketmaster. Presented by the Family Health Centers of Georgia and Toyota. SWYM. Swim. Say what you mean. As much as this information is designed to bring awareness to how we listen, hear, and process, it is also a form of therapy. The little person inside of all of us needs to be heard. As adults, even listening to ourselves is a form of healing, strengthening, and growth. It's okay to speak, talk, express yourself, and be heard, even if you're the only listener. If our testimony does anything at all for anyone else, that makes the continued effort worth the time. Get the words out. You'll feel better, and that's a promise. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
You know, sometimes it seems like all the good times are gone. But you got to keep on searching.
You got to keep on keeping on. For example, take me standing right here today. I like this part. I would not be here with you if I believed the things that the people say. You got to keep on searching. Keep on. Keep it on the cool side. Keep on looking around. Thank you and good night, everybody.